Peptides are everywhere right now. Injectables, anti-aging promises, and a whole lot of hype. But when everyone is pushing the same thing, I always ask, what's the narrative and who profits? In this episode, Amanda Walstrom and I go straight down the rabbit hole on the peptides craze, specifically GHK-Cu and the stem cell conversation, and why we're big believers in signaling the body instead of overriding it. We break down what LifeWave X39 is, in simple terms, how endogenous GHK-Cu works, why more isn't always better, and what it looks like to support the body the way God designed it, without adding something for it. If you've tried everything, you're skeptical, or you're wondering how a little sticker could make a real difference, this episode is for you.
Welcome to Faith Over Pharma, the podcast for women who want a different way to heal. I'm Susan Gladstein, holistic health practitioner and functional nutrition specialist, and here we explore faith-led, holistic approaches to hormones, energy, and symptoms that just keep getting brushed off. If that's you, you're in the right place.
If you've been praying for clarity, if you felt the quiet nudge to step away from the noise, if your body is tired and your spirit feels stretched thin, the Rooted Reset Retreat in Costa Rica this summer is created for you. This isn't a conference, not another place to learn more and do more, but space. Space to rest, space to heal, space to hear God clearly again. 5 nights immersed in beauty, sunshine, nourishing food, meaningful conversation, and unhurried time with the Lord without the constant demands pulling at you. Because sometimes the breakthrough isn't another strategy. It's stepping away long enough to listen. If that stirs something in you, don't ignore it. A $750 deposit secures your spot in one of the last few rooms remaining. Go to rootedresetretreat.com to reserve yours. I'm very excited about today's conversation with my friend Amanda. This is her second time on the show. Go back and listen to episode 57, where she talks about hormones and feeling bloated and all the things and like struggle with weight loss and how she was able to overcome a lot of that. But she and I have been talking the last couple of days because obviously the big sort of push in social media especially is about peptides and stem cells. It's kind of just all the rage and all the buzz, which is kind of the world that we live in, but from more of a natural, like your body doing its thing rather than introducing these foreign or synthetic things that Big Pharma has put together. And so she and I were kind of talking about it. I'm like, we should do a podcast about this very thing because it is all the rage. It is everything people are talking about, which when I see that as social media across the board, when everybody's kind of talking about the same thing, it always gives me kind of an eyebrow raise because then I sort of question, like, what is the narrative that is surrounding this? I have some very, I don't know, maybe controversial thoughts, specifically, the whole Make America Healthy Again, which is great in concept, but Big Pharma is a huge moneymaker, and I don't see them getting away with that. So I told my husband early on when everybody was talking about like, oh, we're going to get rid of this and we're going to get rid of that. We're going to reduce childhood vaccines and all these things. Like, I personally believe that they were just going to reframe it and take things that were seemingly healthy and make that the thing. So everybody thinks they're doing the right thing because of the way it's marketed. And so you and I, Amanda, were talking about that as it relates to, peptides, because that's injectables is a huge business right now. And the world that we live in with LifeWave and the patches it does something similar, but very naturally. And so I would love if you would, because you and I are both in the same boat where we love to go down the rabbit hole and look at all the science and what's going on and read the studies. And I'm curious if you could if somebody is new to LifeWave and patches, phototherapy, how would you explain it in simple terms?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on again. And I love that question because oftentimes people are coming and they're saying, I can get this peptide, I want this result, and there's this injectable peptide out there. But I know that you're talking about LifeWave and you're mentioning this exact same peptide. Why would I put on a patch versus just injecting something? And that question is something that absolutely blows my mind. And so after I get over the shock factor of the fact that you would even consider injecting something that God made, then I'm like, okay, so they're really just honestly going based off of advertising and things. And so we need to change the narrative a little bit and talk about the reality of God-given versus synthetic. And so let's talk a little bit about exactly what the LifeWave patch does. And the biggest word here, it's going to be signaling. Okay. So the LifeWave patch, we're going to talk about X39 specifically, is going to signal your body with your own light. And I'll talk about light in a second to elevate your own endogenous. Endogenous is a really important word. That means your own human GHK-Cu copper peptide. And depending on the patch, it's, different amino acids or peptides or antioxidants, but we'll focus on this one for a second. And so when your body so the patch is simply the signal to elevate your own human copper peptide. That peptide already exists inside of you and it knows exactly what to do with it. Your body knows exactly how much of that to upregulate, to regulate every day, to where to send it to. And when it's your own human copper peptide, you get all the benefits that go along with that copper peptide to activate and make young your own human stem cells, right? To reduce your own fibrinogen levels. That peptide is the precursor to collagen. Now, I'm not telling you that X39 does those things. Remember, X39 is a set of instruction. It is the signal. Okay, so when somebody is coming to me and they're saying, but why would I wear this device? Why would I put this patch on when I can just go and inject it and then it's going directly in and I don't have to let my body do the work? The difference here is think about it in two different categories. I'm either going to signal my body to do and elevate what it was designed to do by God, or I can inject something and I can block that signal, and anything synthetic is never going to be as good as what is naturally created in your body. And now, if I'm blocking the signal for my body to naturally be able to assemble this very important healing peptide, and I'm injecting it, that means that my body is going to become dependent upon the injection. And that injectable synthetic peptide does not do what your body's natural peptide does. So we will really need to look at, am I getting the stem cell activation? Am I getting all these things? And then when we start to talk about dependency, what does that sound like? That sounds like big pharma, you guys. Injectable and dependency. And that is exactly where we are at with our current, not healthcare system, because it's not healthcare, but dependency system. And so if you can simply, I love to tell people, I said, let's just backtrack on this for a second. Let's talk about foundational care. LifeWave is foundational because it's phototherapy, it's light therapy, it's frequency therapy, it's energy therapy. Nothing is going into your body that's foreign. Everyone can look up here what this device looked like. It's the size of a quarter. It's a patch, right? And inside of it, it's a crystal lattice structure. What is that? That's a fancy word for a pattern, right? So if you just think of a reflective pattern and you put this patch on, and the heat that we emit is actually a low level infrared light. Put that in perspective really quick. Your body has its own red light system built into it. That's so incredible. And the patch is simply just mirroring your own light back into you based on that pattern at a frequency. That frequency is the signal that tells your body what to do to elevate this human peptide. And so it is so very simple to have absolutely nothing foreign go into your body, right? And so your body knows what your own light is. Your body knows what this frequency is. So even if we're taking supplements, if we're doing injectables, even the food that we eat is foreign. Your body still has to figure out what to do with that. That's why I tell everybody, I said, let's just pause for a second and talk about foundational. And I am not saying people should not do any supplements, or that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that if you can give your body what is foundationally healing to it, then the food that you eat, the supplements that you take are in a more homeostasis environment, and you can actually reap the positive benefits out of those. And so I know, Susan, that you deal so much with this with the clients that come to you for fertility and everything, and you're getting such amazing results because this is foundational to their imbalance.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm glad that you brought up the supplements because that's always, I would say, probably the number one question I get. Or when I have an intake form from a client, they list off like everything that Mary's sister's cousin had recommended because it helped them get pregnant. And oftentimes when I'm looking at lab results from a, holistic and functional lens, from an optimal lens, I find that either people are not absorbing the supplements that they're taking because A, their gut may be messed up, or um, for a variety of reasons. Like none of the systems in our body are a single thing. They're all intertwined in the way that God made our body so incredibly. Why, lack of sleep messes with your blood sugar, messes with your cortisol, like all of them are intertwined. So if you're raising the levels in one area, it's going to have an effect on other areas. So if you're not being strategic in how you're approaching the foundations, you're going to end up either just pooping out a bunch of supplements or over supplementing. Like I found this to be the case in several of my clients. For example, one of them was taking numerous supplements, each of which had very high doses of vitamin D. So her vitamin D was like max off the charts. Like you're probably not going to get pregnant with vitamin D levels that high, which she thought she was doing the right thing because I'm taking this for that and this for this and this for this. But like it just, her body was just over it, with so much. And so I have found, even just since using the patches myself and understanding the science behind them, I have found far better results prioritizing the patches over supplements and then very strategically adding in things if the body needs some additional support with different things. But a lot of it is like if someone's gut is not great, you could take, I mean, even with injectables, you could take supplements and it's not going to do what you want it to do if you haven't healed your gut. I mean, you even talk about like the food that you're eating, all of that impacts our bodies. I'm curious though, when you sort of started digging into all the science behind GHK-Cu and regenerative signaling, what sort of surprised you most when you started kind of digging into all of the science?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. The one thing that actually surprises me most, so if you go to pubmed.gov, there is 17 pages of this copper peptide that's on there. And what I actually find to be so fascinating, and there's this little chart that shows you when the studies were started, and they were started in 1977 is really when people started publishing them, right? Studies started prior, but actually publishing them was 1977. And then we fast forward to 2024, 2025, 2026. There is like three times the amount of studies that are done on this peptide. And then if you look back and you see the trend of these injectable peptides and how this copper peptide is becoming such a buzzword, I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. So number one is the longevity of studies on this peptide I found to be really incredible when it started, and that there's such an uptick now. That I think is very interesting. But then also when we go and we look at, well, what are some of these studies and what can they really do? And one of the biggest things everyone talks about with this, with the endogenous copper peptide, not the synthetic, is the activation of and making young of your own stem cells. And then I actually started to take that a step further because when I first started wearing the patches over 2.5 years ago, you could have said, Amanda, do you know what stem cells are? And Susan, I would have said, I think they're in my body. And that was about it. So then when you start to deep dive about these stem cells, because I have been someone that is wearing, different creams and things like that since I was 21, trying to reverse the age. And then I'm like, oh, stem cells do it all. So as we learn about stem cells, they are what created everything in our body, and they are what can recreate and regenerate everything in our body, but they start to tick down as we age, and so the studies show they tick down by 60% by the young age of 30, by 90% of the young age of 60, and they go forth. And so when you really want to feel better, when you want to perform better, when you want to age slower, it really all comes back to stem cells. And so that is when I started reading about stem cells, the copper peptide, and then learning about what they do, that was absolutely mind-boggling, because this one peptide affects literally how your body ages, because how healthy you are, how strong you are, is really dependent upon your stem cells. And that's why this is called the Holy Grail of healing.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think that part of it is because it is so honestly simple. Like it's not, you need to work out 30 minutes a day, 5 days. It's literally sticking a sticker that because it is so simple, I think it's almost like it's hard to believe. We think it should be more complicated, which is crazy coming from, you know, I guess I don't know if it's a lifetime of being told just take this pill and it's going to solve your problems. And most people who've been on any kind of pharmaceuticals for a specific symptom, there's always side effects that kind of trickle down into other areas that then you have to take another pharmaceutical to fix that issue, which is the whole point of what I do, is really looking at the root of why is there this dysfunction. I get this a lot in the fertility world. People will say, oh, my doctor just said to take this medication and do an IUI or IVF. And I'm thinking like, well, you're not gonna, your success rate is not going to be very great because you're not actually solving the problem at hand. You're trying to well, and I'll say this from my own, I will say that there's a time and place for any kind of, medical intervention. There are great things. If I have an emergency, for sure. I have had 4 C-sections. Like, I'm not so anti, but also in my own vaccine injury, realizing that God didn't make a mistake when he created our bodies. He didn't leave anything out. He wasn't like, oh, shoot, I'm really glad man came along and invented this, shot or this pharmaceutical. That said, there's there's such a disconnect in the system as it is in Western medicine that we're not looking at why are you having dysfunction? Why are you having disease? That your body is telling you something, and we've all been sort of taught to ignore it. I mean, it's even the same in the weight loss industry. It's like, oh, we'll just will ourselves to starve, eat fewer calories and we'll lose weight. In reality, your body is telling you something. So if you're craving something, if your body needs something, and we just think, oh, well, I can outwill it, it's going to shut up. It doesn't. I will say that it puts up with a lot of abuse and because God created it so amazingly, it will adjust and do things and keep you alive. But living in that state of, fight or flight constantly, which most people, I think, don't realize just how much stress their body is under because it's just the norm. So I might ask a client like, oh, how would you rate your, how you feel or something? And they may tell me a 7 or 8, but the scale that they're working off of may be maxing out at 4 or 5. So yes, it's the top end of their scale. But if we opened that up to what's possible, they're probably going to realize they don't feel as great as they thought, which is the case for me. And I think you probably felt the same way. Like you didn't know how bad you felt until you felt good.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if somebody would ask me, what is the biggest revelation that you have had since starting on this phototherapy technology, I would say my body and I are no longer fighting each other, because I was always frustrated. I'm doing this diet. I'm putting this cream on. I'm doing these things, body. Why aren't you doing what I think you should be doing? And now I understand that all the times that my body wasn't doing what it was doing, or I was unhappy with something, or I was tired, I didn't feel well, I didn't sleep well, I had aches, I had pains, that is just, that was my body's way to communicate with me and say, hey, I'm not right. I'm not balanced. Please help me. And I was just ignoring that communication from my body. And then I start wearing the technology and I start to get balanced and I have energy. And all of a sudden, I'm off of these thyroid medications and I'm off of everything. And it's not because the patch was healing or treating, right? Remember, that is just the signal. This is my body doing everything because now it has the right signal. And I'm finally helping it instead of fighting against it. And now I look at it different. When something isn't right, I'm like, okay, body, what are you telling me? What did I change? What did I stop doing? What am I not doing enough of? So here's a prime example. I, for the first time in my life, I was able to lose weight and build muscle. I am talking rapid in months. There was a significant difference in me, like quite almost unrecognizable within a few months of, and that was just patches, eating healthy, adding in some fasting, and lifting a lot of weights. Well, then Thanksgiving comes along. And then it's just slowly, I'll just eat just this one cheat day and then just continue dessert. And the foods that sometimes we look at as treats or cheat foods are really just designed like heroin to keep us coming back. And so then all of a sudden you have a couple months of this. And so what happened? So I gained some of the weight back. And but I'm not mad at my body because my body's just telling me we were, hey, what were you doing? We were on a good track. We were a team. And now you kind of jumped off the team. And but I know exactly what I need to get to do to get back on. And so I'm not frustrated that my body reacted the way it did because it simply is communicating with me. But here's the cool part, Susan is normally if I would have gotten off this bandwagon for good golly, how many months ago was Thanksgiving? I would have gained everything back and then some. And you guys, I didn't. I didn't. I lost nearly 30 pounds and I only gained 10 back. Some of that is definitely some inflammation, but that was at least a third less than what I would have gained back. And now for the past 3 days, I'm like, okay, I am back on it. Body, we're a team. I remember what it felt to have to feel light on my feet, to have this explosive energy. You know, kids try to keep up with mom type of thing. And so I'm like, I want that feeling back. And so the last couple days, it's I mean, just really cutting the sugars, right? Because sugar, it creates inflammation. What is the root of all disease? It's inflammation. So that's the first thing to always go with me. And the amount of inflammation that is decreased in the matter of 3 days is so significant, where before I would have to cut out my sugars for 2 weeks to really notice a difference in my face or my energy level. And you guys, I'm not craving them like I would have before. Again, because my body and I aren't fighting each other, it's balancing itself out. So even though I was feeding it, nutrition that wasn't actually nutritious for the last couple of months, it was able to handle that better than it ever would have before. And so I think just big picture for everyone that's listening is you and your body are a team and give it the right tools, give it the right signal. And then when something isn't right, don't get frustrated. Just ask it, what is it trying to tell me? And I'm not a doctor. I'm not a holistic practitioner. I don't know everything like Susan knows, but then you go find someone like Susan and say, this is what I'm feeling. So let's get to the root cause. And then let's do phototherapy because that's foundational.
Man, I'm glad that you brought that. I mean, the foundations is so like a big foot stomper for me. And I know like some of my clients, it can be a little bit, I don't know, unnerving when someone's wanting to know what kind of food you're eating and maybe brush off sleep or stress as not being that big of a deal. But again, working in the world of hormones and even like, so I'll be 46 in a couple of months. I have a 10-month-old baby. Everybody always says to my husband and I, like, oh, I could never start over in our 40s. Like, oh, I'm so exhausted and whatever. Side note, having adult children, I can tell you that the baby stage is not the hard stage, but um, I will say that my fourth, as my fourth postpartum journey and being on the patches has been drastically different. I mean, when I got pregnant this time with our little, we call him Gizmo. When I got pregnant with him, I was the heaviest. I was heavier than I was 9 months pregnant with my daughter. And I was working out like a crazy person all through my pregnancy with her. Like I, at 40, felt like I was in the best shape of my life. And then I honestly had a lot of stress and inflammation from work, from my military job, from all the things. And now, postpartum, I don't work out like I used to, where it's like a structured workout. I focus more on getting in movement and sunshine and those foundational aspects, good quality sleep and not skipping on sleep so that I could get my workout done, which was like a huge revelation for me because I just thought, no, I need to push through. And when you do that, or you work out fasted, it's just adding more stress onto the body. And if your stress bucket is full and overflowing, you can't really make room for the good stuff because it's overflowing with all this, inflammation and negativity. So for me, it's been huge to just notice the difference in how I feel just by removing that inflammation, which is also a huge part in the fertility world. What I tell everybody, like, you can take, certain supplements, you could do certain things that, Mary's sister's cousin has recommended. But if you're not getting rid of that inflammation, your body is not able to heal. And a body that is stuck in this stressed state is going to prioritize survival over having another life form come suck more out of you. And so I think that a big message that I want to get out there is, a body that's in a stress state isn't going to heal. It's not going to be optimized. Even we know lots of like professional athletes who are using the patches to like up level their, game at the Olympics or surfing or whatever, gymnastics, all the things. Um, but what would you say, Amanda, to somebody that kind of feels like maybe they're stuck or they're afraid of trying something new, like something as simple as this, because you think like, what's a sticker gonna do? Like what would you say to them?
Yeah, yeah, I love this question. And so that you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Don't say no or yes until you know what you're saying no or yes to. Give yourself permission to say yes to what you've been praying for because things are brought to us in so many different ways. And when something is brought to you, just because it might be different than you have ever heard of, and it doesn't seem like that could be possible, if someone is sharing that, well, this is how it works, here's this, it helps this person, it helped this person, it helped this person, give yourself a chance. Always, always err to the side of giving your body a chance to do what it was designed to do. Now, if somebody is coming to me and they're saying, well, here's this injectable thing, or here, just take this pill, or hey, just take this. Anytime I'm going to be injecting something into my body, I am going to take the time to be skeptical because that's coming into my body. But when somebody is coming to you with frequency, energy, phototherapy, medicine, light healing, and nothing is going into your body, what's your risk? There's no risk. There's no risk absolutely at all. And so always at least do the research and see what's happening with other people because look at their transformation because that's really what you're praying for, right? People often say, like, bring me something to help me. What you're really saying is, Father, please bring me the transformation that I need so I can feel like this. And so when someone brings you something, look at the transformation of others. Don't worry so much about how it works or why it works, because if you're not analyzing everything else in your life like that, don't analyze the one thing that will likely change your life that is foundational to you. Don't analyze them like that. Just give yourself permission to say yes to exactly what you've been praying for when it is brought to you, when it is literally laid in your lap.
Well, and I think that, I mean, I personally believe that the whole pharmaceutical industry has done a fantastic job of sort of brainwashing us to where we don't question. I mean, I did an episode about birth control, and it was pretty eye-opening to me, and you can go back and listen to that episode, but it was pretty eye-opening to realize that the birth control was actually formulated from a fertility doctor. They thought that if they could reset the women's hormones by throwing all this extra estrogen, progesterone, and all these things at them, that it would then like reset them and make them fertile. And they only put the pills to give you a fake bleed because these women, their periods would stop and they thought they were pregnant. And then to be told that they were not was so devastating to them that they made this fake bleed. It's not even a real period, if you didn't know that already. But then they tried to do a similar thing for men, like they're fertile all the time. Women are fertile, 5, 6 days a month. So it would make sense that you would try to do that. But these men had so much depression, anxiety, rage, like their hormones were so out of whack. There was actually a gentleman that committed suicide, in which they kind of said, oh, that's not part of the trial. But it should be noted that they completely did away with this trial of this medication for men's birth control because the impacts were so negative. But for women, it's like, oh, you're hormonal, you just have PMS. Like that's all part of it. And kind of the same with even perimenopause symptoms, like, oh, well, it's normal to feel like junk and whatever. And it's like, I personally, at almost 46, since starting the patches, have like picture perfect periods. There's no pain. They're beautiful. Like everything about them is healthy, which by the way, like fertility is just like a symptom, if you will. That's not the right word I'm trying to look for, but like it's basically an indicator that you are in good health. And I'm a firm believer that there's a lot you can tell about a woman's period, but we've all just been taught that like to ignore it, or it's not fun, and being hormonal is normal, and having acne is normal. All of that stuff is not normal. Like we've been taught that our body is always in this fighting disease state, and it's not. Like your body was designed to be healthy, to have energy, to go out and share your love and light. And so that's one thing that I've really loved personally about the patches. They've changed my family's life so much for the better. And every day I'm learning more and hearing more about them. But if somebody's listening and they're feeling curious about what we've talked about today, Amanda, what would you suggest as their next best step?
Yeah, so I would absolutely say is um, get back with Susan. Contact her. She has a website. She has information that she can put out there, and do a free consult with Susan and ask her and say, listen, this is my health goal. This is what I want. How can these patches help me? What can this do? What can I expect? And you know what she's going to tell you? It's going to be your body healing the body. It's up to your body, but here's what I've seen, and here's the beautiful part. There's no negative side effects. There's no contraindications to any medications. It's just your body doing the work, and it is such a beautiful thing to watch. And so she can walk you through that because, and I'm going to circle this back to the beginning, is because probably the person that's going to be contacting you, Susan, has tried everything and they're frustrated, right? I am sure so many of your listeners are frustrated and sick and tired of being sick and sick and tired of being told that there's no answer and it just is the way it is. And that's simply not true. And so when they contact you, you're going to talk to them about foundational healing and this signal, and that everything they have been doing in the past likely blocked that signal, just like that birth control. What did that do? That blocked the signal of their own human endogenous hormones, completely messed with it. And then what you just said was the result. And so, what basically is that everyone here has to remember is you need to stop blocking the signal and you need to help your body create that signal so it can kind of heal itself. So, absolutely, every single person on here listening, if you feel amazing, contact Susan because amazing isn't good enough. Because you might feel amazing now, but you want to feel amazing in 20 years from now, right? And your stem cells are still ticking down. If you have anything less than amazing, contact Susan to get your body to do what's designed to do. Because out of everything that we've talked about today, just remember that the more stem cells you have, the slower you age, the faster you heal, the better you perform, not just now, but add later in life too. But they tick down with age. And so you are only as healthy, as powerful, as fast, slow aging as your stem cells are. So give your body the signal, and that is phototherapy with X39.
Amazing. I will say I was reading a story the other day about a woman who they were asking, has there been any studies over the last 20 years, like post-mortem of people who've used the patches and what did they discover after they passed away, like where things changed? And one of the answers to that question that I thought was very interesting and very, very powerful was there was a woman, her mother was 95. She had dementia, was really struggling, had a lot of anger. And people who've dealt with dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever know that that is a very normal response. A lot of times it's frustrating when you can't remember things. They had been traveling with her for 3 years in an RV and she couldn't remember it. They couldn't have conversations. They introduced the patches to her. And within just a few weeks, she was recalling their stories of their travels. And they basically got 2 more years before she passed away, but with someone who was vibrant, who was living, who was cognitive, who was like living her best last 2 years of her life, rather than being someone that had to be taken care of, who was angry. They enjoyed her company, and their last 2 years were phenomenal. And so it was just very amazing to me to think about that. Like, I've said this numerous times, but like, newsflash, we're all going to die. I mean, that was a big thing during COVID. Everybody was so afraid. Oh, what if I get COVID? Like, newsflash, we're all going to die. I personally know where I'm going and I'm not worried about that part of it. But I also plan on taking care of the body that God has given me and doing the very most that I can to take the best care. And for me, this has been the easiest, most amazing, like, no brain fog in pregnancy. Like I prepped all my meals. I was riding my bike the day before I went into labor. Like when I started the patches, I was hunched over, hobbling around like a 95-year-old woman, thinking there's got to be more to life than this. And I didn't want to take pharmaceuticals because I was pregnant, but I was in excruciating pain to where I couldn't sleep. It was affecting my life, my relationship with my baby. She's not really a baby, she's now 5, but I I was like, there's got to be more to this. And it did. It gave me a completely different life. And now I'm like, everybody needs to know about this because it's so simple and a lot cheaper than getting an injectable, which, by the way, I personally, having had a vaccine injury, I'm very skeptical about what is in anything that they're trying to inject us. How many stories during COVID was, they went in to get a flu shot and they ended up with the COVID shot because they mixed them up or whatever, conveniently happened. So I just have a lot of distrust in as far as that goes. Like, what are you actually getting? And do you know? And so I think it's so amazing if we can get back to what God intended for us. The world is fallen. There is sickness, there is disease, but that does not have to be your life sentence. And this is a great tool to help you just thrive and be a light. I mean, it literally is a thing. If you know anyone who's doing LifeWave, even my son, when I first started patching, came home and was like, wow, mom, your face, like you're just glowing. And it could have been pregnancy hormones or whatever, but like literally you get around people and they just glow. So Thank you so much for being here. And I know somebody's listening and want to get a hold of you. What is the best way to do that?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook. It's at Amanda Rose Walstrom. That's what it is also on Instagram. And my email address, if anyone wants to reach out that way, is yes@maxperformyourlife.com.
Awesome. And I'll make sure that's all in the show notes. But thank you so, so much. And make sure you go back and listen to her episode. It was 57 about healing hormones. Because I know somebody is listening to this and they've struggled with their thyroid and PCOS and whatever diagnosis the world has put on you is not God's plan for you. So there's a better way.
Thanks for listening to Faith Over Pharma. If this helped cut through the noise, share it with a friend who always asks, do you think this actually works? And if you're ready to go deeper through immersive retreats, phototherapy, or the Rooted Reset, you'll find your next steps at susangladstein.com.
Thanks for listening.